Okay, let's begin. A very, very warm welcome to all our audiences today. And of course, our great speakers on the panel today. Guys, this is a fabulous Friday just for a long weekend for people who are having a Monday holiday. So this is a good start for a weekend for me at least. The welcome also to all the students and faculty and all designers who are planning to join, who have joined today's session. Design Lounge is a collaboration between the Association of Designers of India and Pearl Academy. The co-curators of this series include myself, Aditi Vitastadhar, and Amit Krishan Gulati. I am the head of department for product design at Pearl Academy. And if you have friends who want to join but haven't had time to register, or if your connection breaks down, please go to the Facebook page and you can see it live as well. You will also see social media handles in the chat box for the speakers as well as for the event. So please do check it out. And you can always keep posting your questions in the chat box in the Q&A. And we will take questions at the end of the presentations. If you have any other questions, you can write to us on designloungeindia@gmail.com. So with that, let's begin. As you can read, I think our first session, our session is the 8th episode of the series. And this one is really special because I think the idea of materials is extremely close to my heart. And as a product designer, we always work in the realm of the tangible and the tactile. So working with materials is often very, very interesting. And I think the idea of hands-on learning as part of education is makes material a very, very important, substrate to work with your designs. And I think for me, I was reading when I was preparing for this session, I came across a beautiful quote by Mies van der Rohe. And he says that no design is possible until the material with which you design are understood. And that's really the essence of today's talk, because both the speakers, and let me introduce them to you, are people who understand material, and very well so. Let me introduce our first speaker. I'm going to start with Zuzana Gombosova. Zuzana is a material researcher, designer, and co-founder of Malai Biomaterials. She's a passionate advocate of circular design and sustainable economies. Welcome, Zuzana, to our episode today. Thank you very much for being part of it.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me for this session. I'm honored to be here and share a glimpse of my journey or to be in a conversation here today.
Great. I think our audiences are really looking forward to your work because Malai has become very, very popular. I've seen it being shared and discussed in circles. So I think people will be excited to sort of discover your process here. And of course, our second speaker is Blessen Philip from 3M. I mean, I think everybody knows 3M. I don't know if I should introduce you or not because it's such a well-known company, but Blessen is perhaps somebody that not many people would be aware of. So Blessen is, I mean, his educational qualifications are like it's like a dream come true for an Indian parent, right? It's like BTech, IIT, industrial design, IIM, enterprise management, and you helped set up 3M Design Center. I'm just curious what your diet was as a kid. I mean, how do you make it through like these three institutions at a stretch? All three are very, very interrelated but very different. And so I have to ask you, in your academic experience, where did you have the most fun? Was it in your engineering? Was it in your design time, education, or was it the management?
Hey, thanks a lot, Srishti, for having me. I would say all three really fun. I think design was fun in a completely different way. Management in a very unique way that I got into a lot of learning. But yeah, it was fun. All three in its own way, and actually they were spread across, right? So what you experience also completely different.
Yeah, I was hoping you would say industrial design first because I'm a designer. So we always want that to be, be better than, I am grads. But I think in today's day and time, I think all three are really, really important, and they all have their, I guess, space and
Yeah.
application. So we're going to do something very, very quickly. We're going to do a quick rapid fire round because I want our audiences to get to know you very, very well. So we're going to start with you, Zuzana. Very quickly, who are you in 2020? It's a remarkable year.
Yes, indeed. In 2020, so far, survivor in many senses, I would say, not only because of the, of course, COVID situation, but I am referring to being a survivor in a very tough economic times, in the times of changes, in the times when you really have to not only think about the change, but accept it because it's happening, like, of course, we've been discussing necessity of some sort of more radical change for years now. And now perhaps, it is here, and still none of us has really expected it. So I am still kind of just grasping and adjusting, and living every day as a completely new day, because I have complete inability to make any plans. so yeah, there's nothing else to do than embrace it, I guess.
Yeah, Blessen, 2020. Who do you think you have been? What has this year made you into?
Oh, I think it's the same 2019 and 2020 in terms of who I am, but I think the big difference is being more resilient, and it's like being more resilient and also being more empathetic towards people, and also the fact that you realize there is so much responsibility now, not just to take care of yourself, but there is so much to be done, and you kind of have that power if you choose to, and go ahead and make that change. So I think it's that one word would be resilience, I think, and that power to make some change.
Yeah, I think both the words that you've chosen, surviving and being resilient, I think they both of them are very, very important this year. And I think everybody's been reflecting on that, of what needs to change going ahead. So if you were to encapsulate that in one word, both of you, what are you reflecting on at the moment? What do you think for you is going to be the big shift for next year? Zuzana, you first.
What's going to be the next shift for next year?
What for you? What are you reflecting on, and what do you think is going to shift for you next year?
I might shift myself, but yeah, it's really difficult. I really quit thinking about what if, because it's really, really impossible to do any plans, especially with the kind of field that I work with. So I just try to stay, creative and embrace perhaps the most important part of my education, which has been actually design thinking, and provided me with a lot of different ways how to accept challenging situations. So I don't really know what I'm going to shift into in 2021, but I hope it's going to be something on a positive note.
Yeah, fingers crossed. You've been working in India, of course. So, what has inspired you working in India?
So I came to India because of a job offer initially, and I never dreamed of going to India. I never like imagined I would actually spend. Now it's my 5th year here. But overall, I have to say it's been very inspiring to see the resourcefulness of people here, to see the possibility of so much variety, and different coexisting in relatively harmonious, space. Um, so that's a lot of inspiration. I mean, it's a whole different world for me in comparison of, to what we have at home or what I experience.
Yeah, fabulous. Listen, very quickly to you, and then we're going to move to the presentation, perhaps. What has been your biggest source of inspiration? You've worked for many, many years in 3M, so what's been your biggest source of inspiration?
I think for me, it's been people always, just to see how people create something new that's unexpected or do something that's quite unexpected. That really inspires me. Seeing someone achieve something that you never thought, or you find it difficult, and you just see others go ahead and do it, or someone who achieves something with so little, and they create such big impact with very limited resources. And that contrast inspires me sometimes. So it's people and their actions that I draw my inspirations mostly from.
I think we'll see some of that in both your presentations. And I think before we start really getting into the work that you guys have done, just to set up the context a little bit with our audiences, we're going to bring up the first poll question. I know it's rather early, but we also wanted to get a sense of where the audiences are in their heads about materials. So let's have it. The first poll question is, and this is for the audiences to answer, at what stage in your design process do you start involving materials? So is it the defining stage when you're starting with the brief? Is it the ideation, the prototyping, the testing, or the development stage? So we will keep the poll active while we very quickly pivot to Blessen's presentation, and we'll come back and see the answers after the presentation. So please put in your polls, put in your sort of choices, and we'll see where this takes us. And listen, if you don't mind, let's start with your presentation. I'm sure audiences are waiting to see what you have for us today.
Sure. Let me just share my screen.
So,
just let me know when it's up.
We can see it. If you go full screen, then the stage is all yours.
Okay. Is it full screen now?
Yes, it is.
All right. Thanks, and welcome one and all who have taken out time to find out a little more about material matters. So today, I'll try and bring in a perspective on how design and material science work together. My name is Blessen Philip. I'm the design manager at 3M, and also I have the responsibility for being the design lead for Global Rail program in India. So my responsibilities include product innovation, business value creation, brand experience design, and of course, talent development. I started off my career with Hero Motors, and it's today it's like over 15 years of me working with 3M. So most of what I'm going to cover today is going to be from my experience working with 3M company. So at 3M, right, we believe that science is just science unless it's applied to make something better, something that's going to improve life or make things easier. So that's why 3M is about science applied to life. And it's really about how we can improve lives. And though you might not find a lot of our technologies up front out there, but you would certainly have experience. If you have a smartphone, the adhesives that bind the parts together that replaces screws are probably from 3M. And then you would see how that creates much sleeker gadgets for you, how it makes it more durable. And there are a host of other ways 3M materials get into our life. 3M is a $32 billion global company. It's a material science company that over the last 118 years have created this being a scientific powerhouse with material science. And it's powered really by this 96,000 plus talented minds that spread across 70 countries. And we reach out to our customers through 4 business groups. So I'll talk a little more about that. And the 51 unique technology platforms that 3M has invested in over the years, where we have experts who are going to create these 60,000 plus solutions, products that are there in the market. And we've been awarded 126,000 patents in our history, and this is at a rate of around 3,000 patents every year. And what brings it all together is this curious culture. So talking about how we serve our customers, we do it through these 4 business groups: safety and industrial, transportation and electronics, healthcare, and the most known, the consumer business group with the Post-its and the Scotch Brides and Command. So looking at how 3M has created these fundamental strength, this is something that sets us apart from any other company in this world, with these 51 technology platforms that every business group and region have access to, and how scientists and designers and engineers actually work within these technology platforms to create those 60,000 products. I'll take an example of one of them. Let's say the adhesives. This is how we take one technology platform and use it across our businesses. Be it the right light reflective films that keep us safe on the road, or the devices that you use that have 3M solutions that make the screens brighter, reducing the amount of battery usage, prolong the life and the need for recharging. We make sure that we engineer our adhesives so strong that it can hold planes and trains and buildings together as one. At the same time, we also engineer our adhesives to be soft enough to be used on human skin, like you see in our medical tapes and dressings. And of course, the adhesives that help you ideate using Post-its, and the Scotch tapes that you can write on, or the command strip that does not peel out the paint from your wall. Now, if that one technology platform can do so much, just imagine the combination of multiple technology platforms. If you take the example of our high performance window films that keep our buildings cool, it has adhesives, films, nanotechnology, and light management that bring together to create a solution. And this is the basis for the 60,000 plus products that are out there in the market for 3M. Now, you've seen the 3M technology platforms and how our manufacturing capabilities help create these solutions. But what really connects these to the real end user needs is 3M design. And 3M has been investing heavily in design so that our technologies are connected the right way to create that human impact, so that we know what the needs are and then look back at what are the different ways we can solve for improving every life. And this organization is now 150 plus designers and growing, and we are spread across 6 countries now with our global design centers. So I'll give you a snapshot of these. The first one, of course, was set up in St. Paul, Minnesota in US. That's what you see on the top left corner of the screen. We have 3M Japan, then 3M Design China, one Korea, and we have our 3M Design Europe in Milan. And what you see at the lower right corner is our own 3M Design Center in Bangalore. And this is a space that we get our customers to come and collaborate, designers to come and explore new material possibilities. This is like a playground for a designer, where they can come and explore new opportunities, new materials, or share their stories. And that's how we build on what we learn from other designers and create new and innovative solutions. I'm going to quickly talk about 2 aspects that designers are passionate about in terms of materials. One is light and the other is surface. And let's look at a couple of ways 3M has been innovating in this area. What you see here is the most reflective surface in the world. This is a wall of light that's created using 12 small LED lights. And that's because of this highly reflective 3M film that's highly conformable, that helps light to travel in a certain way and get reflected, that lights up this entire wall with just 12 lights. Taking a cue from light reflectivity, There are films that were used in electronics products and the electronics industry that translates really well into creating visual effects and creating an effect that architects look for or automotive designers look for. Where light passes through a certain material and it creates an unexpected kind of visual appearance. You see that with our light strings or our light redirecting films, where we can control the way light moves from one point to another, or the light spreads. And these are transferable between areas. So you can take a product that exists in a particular division or a business group, and then try and experiment with that in other areas. For example, here is a product that was actually designed for automotive application that has then moved to transition to something in like an architectural lighting. Here's another example, which is an in-between space between an architectural and an automotive application, where what you see on the left side is what looks like a solid block of brushed aluminum, but actually something that can let light pass through. And a combination of different materials that you pick and choose can help you create different visual effects with this. Another technology that's very popular on the roads that keep us safe and bring our families back home safe on our roads is the retroreflective film. Here we worked with Design Polytechnic, and the students were exploring how they can take this retroreflective technology and put that onto a fabric. And look at what they have created. Here's another example where one of our OEMs in the electronics industry, they're exploring how these surface materials that were created for architectural market can be used on electronic gadgets or devices that give a certain texture or finish that they want to create, which was earlier not possible. And then it basically is a candy store of material possibilities using the combination. Just you can choose whatever you want to use, creating new inspirations for architects and interior designers and automobile designers who can create more sustainable solutions and the kind of spaces that they envision and bring it to life using some of these material choices that are there. Let me now switch to a few examples of how we work in India. I'll use a couple of examples on real projects that we have worked with our customers. One of them, and something that's really close to my heart, is how we work with Indian Railways. 3M has been working with railways for over 20 years. And the time when design got involved, and our first approach was to take a step back from all these materials and the products that we were suggesting and really look at what are the real needs of our people? What is that context in which things are operating? What is that ecosystem in which these materials should go into? And we mapped out a passenger journey. And we looked at how do we create an enhanced passenger experience that Indian Railways needs? And then look at what are the ways we can bring that to life. We brought in experts to talk about how some of these can be solved for. But the starting point really was on that journey map. We're looking at what are those needs and aspirations and the anxieties that a passenger would have, and how do you build an experience around that? How do you create an ecosystem that helps you maintain that experience? And how do you build and manufacture that experience for that end user? Today, you'll see a lot of our trains having films that are wrapped that are much more expressive than dual tone or single tone or pinstripes. At the same time, eliminating the whole painting process in some of the cases, which are the process in itself is not very sustainable. And we are now looking at this collaboration going into temperature reducing coatings for railways, some of the new materials that we are exploring to create a better passenger experience for Indian Railways. Another area is on how design can help have a conversation on designing the future. This is about creating a solution that our customers can then have a conversation on. When a designer creates a visualization of what that future could be, using the kind of materials that could be there, it takes the discussion towards what could be more sustainable. What are the different choices that are available? And then we start looking at solutions that could help us get to that future in the most efficient way. The third one is on how our customers want to partner to really decode what the future is going to be. This is an area where 3M learns a lot by working with our customers. Each of our interactions with designers really help us understand what that future could be. And then we can decode that using the kind of materials that we could then curate for them to help them get into that future using these unique and advanced materials. We also make sure that it's not just a digital experience when people look at 3M materials, where they go to the website and then pick and choose, but really a more immersive experience with every space that 3M has. So when we design a space, we make sure that there's an area there people can touch and feel and really explore. So the way we have designed the 3M Design Center in Bangalore is by creating a space that has enough room for designers to come in and explore new materials. It's like a playground where they can look at what are these different possibilities. We create artifacts that inspire conversations on what the future of certain solutions could be. So they come to us with their problems and we help solve them with our material technologies. We help create new possibilities for them to explore, things that are beyond what they probably would have thought about. This is an example of the Washington DC Innovation Center, where a customer can walk in and explore what are some of the products and the possibilities of using 3M technologies and the solutions. We have created one in Mumbai. It is a state-of-art space that can really deep dive into some of the areas that 3M is focused on creating an impact for us in India, understanding what are some of the critical areas that India needs to focus on, and then what are those problems that 3M could help solve for. Let's switch to how we are positioning ourselves for a more sustainable future. 3M put forward the key strategies for a sustainable future, and we have three priorities in that. The first is the science of circular. It's about making do with more with less. And this is about making sure that when we design a solution, we make sure that we use less, but we are able to get the best out of it. For this commitment, 3M made sure that there is a sustainability commitment on every product that we introduce in the market. And this is a huge impact because there are almost 1,000 products that go into the market every year. So having that sustainability commitment value on each of these products help have a conversation on how these products could be better for our environment. The second is on science of climate. This is about decarbonizing the industry, accelerating global climate solutions, and improving our environmental footprint. An example of this is how our headquarters in St. Paul is 100% dependent on renewable energy sources. And our commitment is to have at least 50% of our global operations on renewable energy by 2025. And the third one, which I was fortunate to be part of, is the Science for Community, where through its programs called 3M Impact, 3M has committed to 300,000 of 3M's employee hours to be spent on community activities, spent on making sure that we spread science and we inspire people to join us. I had the opportunity to work on a 3M Impact program in Vietnam, where 3M sent me and my colleagues from across the globe to work with an NGO to help them set up solutions and help them set up a strategy for how they could create a more sustainable future through renewable energy. And coming to the last part of my presentation, it's about how we are responding to COVID-19. For us, the top priority is the safety of our employees. And we have taken a lot of measures and protocols globally, and we are learning from that. And we are sharing these learnings with our customers on how to get them to sustain their businesses, to make sure that there is business continuity for our customers. The second is on how we have doubled our global output of N95 respirators. This is to help and protect our healthcare workers and first responders who are critical to taking care of this global pandemic. And the third is how we are partnering with companies. Here, we have partnered with Ford to create a filtration unit that could be scaled. And we have also partnered with MIT to create testing units that could be scaled from a lab in MIT to a global stage. I'll now switch to the last part where the designers at 3M here in India, there's a team, and with the marketing and the R&D, put together a plan to help our customers cope with this new normal. We got together over the last 2 months to identify some of the critical areas based on our learnings in railways and airports and retail space, to identify what are those touch points that are really critical. And then how do we create a more clean and safe environment through sanitization and hygiene, through new safety standards and solutions? How do we refurbish some of these spaces to be more welcoming and to be more safer? And how do we communicate these to our customers and our customers' customers? And we made sure that we didn't just do it for 1 or 2 areas. Like, we started with the airports and the rail, but we quickly scaled it up to solve for quick service restaurants, retail, commercial spaces, toll plaza. And today we are also working on tech that could help schools get back to opening in a safe manner so that our kids are safer. So to end it, I want to share with you a video that tells the story of our humble beginning. This basically shows our culture of innovation and our scientific exploration and where it's going to lead us. Back in 1902, when 3M was started by 5 individuals who got together to start a mining company. Their ambition was to create a mining company. But very soon they realized that the mineral that they were going after, called corundum, was not the one that was there in their mind. And this, what they found, that mineral had zero commercial value. But this failure also created a new set of opportunities for them. So they set out on creating a company that is today what it is, a scientific powerhouse based on a culture of innovation. So take a look.
Blessen, we don't have audio. Could you start again, please?
Sure. Is the sound coming through?
I can hear you, but not the video.
Okay, let me just stop and share again.
Yeah. Okay, let's try. Fingers crossed.
No?
Not for me. I don't know. Aditi, can you hear the audio? Is it just
no,
me?
the audio is not there. I can see the video running, not the audio.
Yeah. Okay, let's give it one more try, as we'll come back to it. Murphy's Law, guys. I keep telling you, there's always something that...
I know, we tested it.
We tested it, it was fine.
Yeah.
It was absolutely fine.
Okay, I'll try and share it directly.
Yeah, okay. We've done 2 test runs and in both it worked perfectly. It's only in the live event it had to kind of act funny.
How is it now?
No, I think you may have to turn off your microphone and turn it on again. Maybe it's one of those things where the audio, it's not picking up from your computer. If you go on or off mic, yeah, turn it back on and try it again. Maybe it'll work. You know, I wish we could do it like the old times when you had the computer and you just had to knock it a couple of times and it would come back on. Can't do that to digital.
Any luck?
No. Unfortunately, it's not playing. What we could do is maybe we take a
I
look
could just,
at.
yeah, tell me.
I was saying that you could send us a link or send us the video. We can play it in a bit. And in the meantime, we can go ahead with the poll question answer. Hopefully, people have answered it. So, Predika, do you mind bringing up the poll question? You can take the, yeah, you can stop screen share, I guess. Somebody has a recommendation that you have to tap on the 3 dots and on the video sound. Okay, I don't know what that means, but we'll try it in a bit again. Verika, can we have the poll answers, please, in the meantime, while we figure our technological imperative here? Oh, there we go. So, Blessen, is this something that you were expecting? So, 53% of our audiences feel that they start thinking about the design, about the material during the ideation phase. Does that surprise you? And following that is the defining stage and then the prototyping. That's still 20%. Does that surprise you, or do you feel that's pretty much in line with the way you guys work with designers at 3M?
Yeah, am I on mute?
No, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's pretty much what we want to really see. Earlier on is really good. I think if they are looking at materials at the ideation phase, I think that's really good. I'm sure I'm not surprised with seeing it the defining phase, but someone starting at testing and developing, yeah, that's pretty late in the game.
Yeah, there were only 3%.
Yeah.
But that's just of our audience. So if we multiply that with the number of designers that there are, if we think of this as a sample, then 3% is still very, very high. That means still a lot of creatives think of materials very much towards the end rather than at the initial part of the.
I'm really surprised with the 20% on the prototyping. That's a very traditional old way of bringing in materials at a prototyping stage. Yeah, so that surprises me. But it's good to see that there is 53% on ideation. That's really important. And if you can start at the defining phase, it's really good.
So I think that brings me, thank you everybody for your polls. Don't worry, we have more polls, one more I think left for you to have, well, 2 more actually. So I think, listen, one of the questions that I had for you was that, I think you mentioned that you work a lot with designers, you collaborate with architects, you collaborate with interior designers, fashion designers, product designers, and of course you have a pool of scientists working with you. But what does the process really look like when a designer wants to work with 3M? What is the process that you guys have, let's say as a material incubator, if I can call it that? I'm loosely using that term, but how do you incubate with materials, creative process with material?
See, frankly, it really starts with a conversation. And we encourage that. It's about bringing people together because in this complex world, right, the kind of problems that we're trying to solve, we need to understand that you need to work with others to solve for them. So it's really about starting a conversation on what is that value that you want to drive, and then looking for others to help you solve for that. So the same applies for material exploration too, that you need to start talking to people who have some experience working on different materials or solving for these problems that's on your mind. So starting that conversation, I think, is that first part. And then, of course, you need to bring the craft of design, right, where it's good to see the polls show that the ideation phase and the define phase has so much importance given to materials. That's the place where you need to start getting hands-on and understanding what are these materials and what are the things that you should be doing and should not be doing, and start learning more about it. So for me, it's about the conversations that you start, and then about being hands-on.
And if I were, let's say, I think working as a professional and working as a design student has its own challenges. So, if I were a design student and if I want to work with 3M or the kind of materials that you have, how do I go about working with such a large organization? Because, as a student, you're often overwhelmed with by the idea of working with large organizations and what that actually means or entails. So first question, do you work with students? And if somebody was interested to collaborate with 3M, how does one go about doing that?
Yeah, of course, we work with students. We work with students a lot. We actually had 2 internship programs this year through the COVID scenario, and we hired one of the interns because of the impact of the program that he was running on making our roads safer. And we showed this presentation to the management, and we just had to retain the talent because there was so much of exploration on how we can make roads safer in India. So yeah, we work with students. It usually starts, like I said, about that conversation on what is it that you want to do, what is that value that you want to create, and once we understand that, and then we start making those connections within the company. And that's one of the beauty of 3M, that they say that within 3 phone calls, or emails, you actually get your answer, or get to a person who could actually answer that question for you. So get hold of someone through an email or phone and talk to them about what you want to achieve, what are the problems that you're facing, and then they would make that connections for you within the company to help you connect it on what are the right materials or the things, because it's such a big company and with so many technology platforms, the thing that works is making those connections.
Oh, fabulous. I think I may have lost network in the middle. I hope that was okay. I don't know what happened, but I'm back on now. Sorry for that. I lost video for a little bit, so I'm a little disconcerted at the moment. I think what we could do is perhaps now, listen, we want to come back to you after we also have a quick word with Zuzana, and we'd like to bring her presentation in, because what was very interesting for me is that story about that little rock, and when nobody saw any possibilities, what a creative spark can do to it. And that's really what sort of I thought of when I saw Zuzana's work. So before we do that, we have the next poll question very quickly for our audiences, and we will look at the answers after Zuzana's presentation. So Prerika, can we have the second poll question? And this is the interesting bit, because it is still about materials, but this time what we want to know from you guys is, if you've ever actually had a project that was entirely based around a specific material. So from the starting point, what Blessen was talking about earlier, pretty much at the defining stage. So your options are once, several times, always. Maybe you always work like that. Maybe you've never worked like that, and maybe this is not something that you're interested in. So whichever your way of working with material is, please do answer, and we'll get back to this poll in a second. Zuzana, I'm going to share your presentation. We had another little bit of a technological concern today, but I have it here, and let me know when you can see my screen. Is my screen visible?
Not yet.
Okay.
I still have the poll question on.
Oh.
Yeah, it's working now, Trish.
Are we full screen?
We are on full screen. And now
okay.
Yeah.
I have to be careful which slide to start on, Zuzana. Sorry. Please take it away. Let's hear from Zuzana and her fabulous work with Malai. All yours, Zuzana.
Thank you. So hello again, my name is Zuzana, and I am a material researcher and designer. And I'm going to tell you a little more about my practice, because it's currently a field that creates a lot of confusion, I think. And in the next slide, I'm going to start with a map, actually an image from a Google Earth, because I believe, what for me the most during this entire journey was were actually different places where I had a chance to stay, to live, to explore the culture, and perhaps that has impact on my work as well. So to give you a glimpse, introduction into who I am, I come from Slovakia, from a small place called Vinne. It's actually a village that has not even 2,000 inhabitants. It's famous for making wine, so we make wine over there. And I decided when I was 18 that I would like to study design. Nobody studied design in my entire village, so it was pretty odd. And my choice was design of textiles and fashion, which I went on to study in Czech Republic. So my interaction with the materials per se came pretty early on, and it was very hands-on. After a year and a half, I got an opportunity to become an exchange student in Istanbul, in Turkey. And I stick to Istanbul for 4 years, actually. After finishing my studies there, I worked as a fashion designer for local brands and designers. And I think this was the first time I truly realized how my work can have an impact on the real world. Because in school, you often are in your kind of a small world, where you create specific projects and you design. But it's a completely different experience, of course, when you see your product out in the world en masse. And I realized, okay, what I do is not only about design, but it has an impact on people's life and impact on the environment. So when I was deciding what to do next, I was looking at the master's courses, and I was looking for something that would give me a holistic perspective on the design, on the place of products in the world. I chose design in design course or design research course based in London at Central St. Martin's University, called Textile Futures at the time. However, nowadays it's called Material Futures. And this really kind of opened up a whole new perspective on materials as well for me. And I decided that materials will be the base of everything I do, because I saw them as the building block of absolutely everything. And even from a historical perspective, we have to look at the fact that material precedes any idea of a product. Before you have any idea about the product, you actually have to have material. There's no other way around it. So next slide, please. So out of the world of textile, what is the significance of materials in the world in general? Materials are so important that we actually define particular historical eras of humanity in terms of materials. So we had a Stone Age, we had Iron Age, we had Bronze Age, and we are in a kind of interesting stage now, and perhaps we could define the era that we live in nowadays as an era of waste, because there is simply so much of it lying around in the whole planet. And we have to think about whether this is actually a progress any longer or not. So next slide, please. I think when we talk about materials, many people imagine just a piece of something, but actually materials have much more impact on our lives. When we talk about materials, we think about people's health, we talk about value, we can talk about sensorial experience that materials bring with them to our life. We can talk about performance. Human progress has been measured in materials that enabled us to grow and to progress as humanity. We can talk about materials in terms of culture. We can talk about materials in terms of environment. We can talk about materials in terms of beauty, finding beauty in different materials. And again, coming back to the waste. And I would like to talk about waste, if you don't mind, a little more, because waste actually is what brought me also here to India in the first place. Next slide, please. So I came to India for the first time in 2015 when I was invited to work on a research project for at an innovation center of one large Indian manufacturer. And we were researching materials that come from the industrial waste stream of all the factories of the company. And it really, I think, gave me an understanding of the scale of the problem with waste nowadays. We were identifying every single material type, categorizing it into a huge chart at the time, I remember. And we did a small calculation trying to find out, okay, so how much waste do we actually produce in this company? And we found out that every single minute, the company produces 120 kilograms of solid waste. And 120 kilograms, you can imagine that's a lot of that's quite a huge quantity. And so in the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what was my role of sort of a material researcher or material designer over there. So I look at the materials with problematic scenarios. Those were materials that had some sort of challenge, or there was a challenge in terms of disposing them. They were challenging to collect, to recycle. One of such materials was turning and boring waste, which is waste metal material that comes from manufacturing processes of really anything, mostly components. And there's a lot of assumptions about recycling. For example, when people think about metals, the assumption is, oh, well, metals are easy to recycle. Actually, you have to put certain amount of old metal when you're making a new one. And yes, metals are, of course, possible to recycle, but you also have to look at the form in which they come as a waste, because that can pose a problem. For example, in case of aluminium turning and boring waste, when you try to melt this material, it actually burns before you're able to melt it. And so you can see that every single year, the company is literally losing over 25,000 kilograms of aluminium just because there are no effective ways of recycling. So I was researching different processes that would enable us to somehow salvage this material and give it another life, one more life. And so I experimented with a process of hot compaction, which uses heat, which is lower than the melting point of the metal, and pressure in order to create a solid material that can either be reused in applications that don't require such a load, or can be eventually recycled again. So in the next slide, you can see an example of one of our samples from the experiment. These are slices of mild steel that were made using the process of hot compaction, and we tested them. We tested them also for different finishes. You can polish them, and you could use them again for some application. If you don't want to use them again, you can recycle them in this form. And this was kind of my introduction to India. And during my time in Mumbai, I came across another enthusiast of materials who happened to be my colleague, and we got very excited about one particular material that I researched earlier during my master's, called bacterial cellulose. And I'm going to talk about bacterial cellulose a little more, but the journey of exploration of this material brought me to another destination in Kerala. Next slide, please. And yes, and we are coming to the land of coconut, which is Kerala. And many of us perhaps think about coconut mainly in terms of food or coir mats, but there's really more to coconuts than you thought, as we say at Malai. And coconuts are particularly important for us at Malai because they happen to be a favorite food of a particular bacteria called Acetobacter xylinum. Next slide, please. Which is able to produce a material called bacterial cellulose, or as the material is known in its place of origin, Philippines, nata de coco. So nata de coco is a fermented material. One slide, yeah. It's a fermented material which can be grown on a variety of media. But one of the best media to grow it on is water from nature coconut. And water from nature coconut is interesting from another perspective as well, because here in India, practically no coconut processing unit recycles this water. It happens to be an agricultural waste. And in fact, a small coconut processing unit disposes of approximately 4,000 liters of this water every day. And that's a lot of water for us to create bacterial cellulose. So me and the co-founder of Malai, Susmit, have decided to explore the potential of this material. A, because we had a raw material or resource that we can grow it on, and B, because nata de coco or bacterial cellulose is a fascinating material that has a huge potential, not only in the area that we work in, but also in medical industry, cosmetic industry, textile industry, food industry, and it's even being researched for use in extraterrestrial space. So our aim was to create range of material which is based on this, and explore and further explore its application. Next slide, please. We have, oh, I think one back. Yes. So we have developed, and we basically still are developing material which can be categorized as a biocomposite material. And here is just kind of a very, very brief diagram of how we make it. So first of all, you need coconuts, as I mentioned. You need water from nature or the brown coconut, which you sterilize. You add bacterial culture to it, and you let the bacteria do its work. So the whole process of fermentation takes around 12 to 14 days. And at the end of this process, you can harvest the sort of jelly-like material from the surface of the solution. Now, our addition was to start adding different types of natural fibers. Currently, we use mainly fibers from banana stem, fibers from hemp, and fibers from sisal, which serve as kind of reinforcement of the material. And we further refine these ingredients into either sheets of material, or we can mold them into three-dimensional shapes. And in the next slide, you can see sort of a brief philosophy or essence of what we do.
Will start playing.
Okay. But we have no sound. Oh, no. Do you have sound?
And this cream of coconut is essentially made from coconut water, and that's why the name coconut milk. You can be guilt-free in throwing this material out. It biodegrades within 90 to 120 days.
I'm sorry, it seems that I was on mute. I didn't realize the video won't play. Let me just start that again. I beg your pardon. I will do that in a second. Okay. Go full screen. And there we go again. Audio good?
Yeah.
we actually call it nata de coco or cream of coconut, which is the primary raw material for making malai. And this cream of coconut is essentially made from coconut water, and that's why the name coconut milk. You can be guilt-free in throwing this material out. It biodegrades within 90 to 120 days.
Byproduct from material that doesn't cost the environment, the people, at any level of its making, use, and disposal. One of such material is malai.
Are the only materialistic species on this planet, and we must always believe that we borrow everything from nature, and whatever you take from nature, you modify it, and it should be in such a form that it can go back to nature.
Okay. So we also have this video on our social media, on our website if you'd like to watch it again. And we started the whole project at the beginning of 2017, driven with an idea to develop material that is truly circular, but doesn't compromise on performance. It can be used by an array of applications. We actually didn't think about the leather straight from the beginning. We wanted to explore the material for the purpose of creating packaging, but over the stretch of time, after doing many experiments, we ended up with a material with a feel and look which felt kind of close to leather. So we decided to take this direction ahead. It took us, I think, 7 or 8 months to just come up with something, that we could then take forward. So it was a very time-consuming process, and it involved a lot of theoretical research. We collaborated with experts from fields of engineering and material science and microbiologists, getting their feedback, getting their advice, often being ridiculed as well, but it's all about trial and error. So in the first image of 2017, you can see some of the samples that we developed in the first couple of months. Within or after 1 year, we got to the stage when we were actually able to make this material in a larger scale. So we made material that was 1 by 1 meter. That's a huge step for us. And over the last 2 years, we collaborated with a lot of material libraries. We were approached by many designers and manufacturers who were eager to try the material. And we actually also registered a huge change within the mindset of the material. If we were doing this project maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, we would be regarded as a couple of hippies playing with coconuts somewhere in a rural area of Kerala. But times are changing, and people actually put much more focus on materials that have a strong focus on sustainability. Next slide, please. And so we've been exploring the applications for the material in various fields. At the moment, we would recommend the material the most for the application in fashion accessories. And in fact, we work mostly on the B2B basis with fashion accessories manufacturers, brands, and designers. Many of them have vegan leather brands. Many of them are just looking for more sustainable materials and alternatives to leather. We are currently developing the material to be more suitable for footwear as well. And we are also exploring its potential for the use in interiors and for the furniture. And in the next slide, you can see a couple of collaborations that we have had a chance to execute over the past couple of years. So the red chair is a collaboration with Studio Star from 2019, where material was used for upholstery. The shoe that you can see over there is a collaboration with Slovakia-based studio Crafting Plastics, who working with bioplastics from 2018, and we have done also a very interesting collaboration with the students of University of Tomáš Bata in Zlín, Czech Republic, who have been exploring the use of materials for mainly furniture and interiors. So here you can see a small example of a rocking chair where the material is used on the top. We also happened to win an award in 2019, El Deco Award in the category of Talent of the Year. So it's a very eventful year for us. In the same year, as you can see in the next slide, we also ran a successfully crowdfunding campaign because we needed, funding to buy some of the equipment for the next stage of our development. And this was also an opportunity to present kind of a first collection of accessories that we designed here in our studio. So these accessories were offered to our backers as reward. In the next slide, you can see our beginning of year 2020, which began on a very positive note. In February 2020, we won Circular Design Challenge Award, which is India's largest fashion sustainability award, backed by IMG Reliance Nation, which we created kind of a fashion collection with the accessories that we designed for the crowdfunding campaign, presenting it in context of the tradition that actually comes from Kerala. In the next slide, I would perhaps like to talk a little more about what does it mean to be a material designer, as it's one kind of an emerging area today in the design world. And in many, I think in many of its stages, it's pretty similar to any other design work or any creative process. You might start with a research question. You want to develop a material for a certain application, or you might have a certain resource at your disposal and you want to explore the possibilities of the resource, keeping certain conditions in mind. So normally, after doing a lot of theoretical research, backing up, creating structures for your experiments, because you don't want to do just random experiments, you can go on for the rest of your life. But you start with initial experiments that generally lead you somewhere. Some of it might be failure, some of it might be success. You might even get to a point where you feel like you came across something really, really exciting and you feel like a genius. Very often later on, you'll come to the point where you feel like there is no way ahead and you really don't know where else to go with your idea. And that's a very important step, because I think in many cases that's the step where you need to communicate with people from different fields, because bringing material or exploring possibilities of new material is not a one-man show, and the more feedback you can get on your experiments, on your invention, perhaps the better. And eventually this might bring you to kind of a refined research and maybe even commercial success. And so next slide, please. And I'd like to talk about what actually determines whether new material stays here or not, from my perspective of a small-scale manufacturer. You, of course, foremost important thing, you have to have the availability of the resources. Many times, I think I come across materials that are very exciting, coming from perhaps students of design, designers themselves, but where the fact that there is not enough of this resource is not considered. So it has to be something that is available in the world. Your idea, if you really want to push it, has to be scalable. Your material has to comply with requirements for performance, because one thing is the fact that your material is beautiful, but if it cannot perform, unfortunately, you won't be able to push it to many different directions. It has to have a cultural relevance. A very important step in the process of innovation is having funding. And I think this is very often undermined in the home, perhaps the design education in general. I remember nobody ever told me about how to get your funding with designs and ideas. It's very important. I think the earlier you explore that, the better. And last but not least, there has to be a market for your material. And I would like to finish my presentation with a picture that I found in one of the factories of the Mumbai-based company that I used to work with, that I identify perhaps the most with. Shortcuts lead to deep cuts, and it's true. There are no shortcuts when you are solving problems and when you're trying to bring something as complex as material to the world, or maybe new design to the world. And you really, really have to understand the material first before you design a product. I think that's very important to understand. Ultimately, this is what this whole session is about. So thank you for your attention.
Fabulous. Let me just turn on my video. We've stopped sharing. I think those were, what a fabulous process, and extremely painstaking from what I can see. So I think perhaps what people don't realize often is that the process of working with materials it comes with its own challenges and its own prerequisites and sort of framework. So the science behind working with materials is perhaps what one needs to understand. I'm just to keeping an eye on time. We have maybe about 15 minutes left to go. So what we're going to very quickly do is we're going to open we're going to open ourselves to the Q&A, and I'm going to try and bring the two presentations together with maybe one or two questions towards the end. So one of the questions, which is, and I have been prompted on the WhatsApp group to take those questions. Okay, the first question comes from an anonymous attendee, and I think that's for you, Blessen. How do you define material quality or characteristics that people want to perceive?
I think it's a broad question. For me, I think it starts with the value that you want to create out of that. So we usually start by understanding or defining what that value is that you want to create, and then figure out ways to measure the different parameters to get that value. So it could be performance, or it could be a certain aesthetic requirement that you have, or creating a new experience, or connecting emotionally with your customers. So it really goes back to what that value is, and then trying to measure it.
Thank you, Blessen. There is, in fact, one more question that is coming back to you. What are the current innovations and development running around and inside 3M for the next 5 years with respect to designing and branding markets? How do you do digital branding market? This is an anonymous attendee, but I assume they want to know what kind of innovations is 3M going to come up with. I don't know if that's if you're about to reveal any of that. That's a tricky one. So Blessen, please try and answer with that much discretion as you need.
No worries. I think the big transformation is going to be on digital, right? How we reach out to our customers and how we inspire them from a digital point of view. So a lot of investments in AR, VR, and one of the biggest challenges, how do we bring that experience of material in the AR, VR environment? Right? How do they get an immersive feel? So without even coming to our space, how do they get to know what these material possibilities are? Right? So that's a huge area of focus. So you'll also see that in the way our technology platforms are evolving. the latest one with 51 technology platform has a section for digital in that. So apart from all the regular ones, I think the big shift is going to be on how we are going to connect better with our customers in the digital space.
Yeah, that didn't give anything away. Well done. I think there are a couple of more questions, and I think this one for you, Zuzana. Are we constraining our ideas by involving material study at the ideation stage? So this is a counter question to our supposition that we should begin looking at materials early. So Zuzana, do you think it is constraining to start early with materials?
No, I don't think it's constraining at all. You should, at least the more you understand about the material limitations and possibilities, the more accurate your design will be in the later stage. And I agree, it can be very confusing sometimes to start with a lot of theoretical research because you know, part of that kind of a creative, wondrous mind kind of goes back, but it's very valuable and extremely useful stage of the work.
I think for me that kind of is a right question to bring back and see what our audience thought about working with materials as a primary project goal. Predika, can we have the answer to our last poll? Let's see what the audiences think generally about working with material as an intent. Predika, can we see the results of the poll, please? Let's see. I'm very curious. Aha. So several times it seems that a lot of people have begun with the material at the core. So I'm very glad to hear that actually. That's 49%. The next is never. Oh gosh, guys, we need to get you started. 21% said never. Only once is 19%, and always is 12%. But not by a thing called zero answers, which means you've definitely got people who are interested in working with materials, even if they may not know where to start and where to end. But does that surprise you? Do you feel this is what you were expecting? Guys, the fact that yeah, this is for the speakers. This is a question for the speakers.
Oh, I'm happy to see that at least several times got there, because I understand like most of the attendees are probably, you know, students just exploring the whole idea. So I understand that might not have come yet into picture as the most important thing. Yeah.
I think one of the things that, yeah,
I'm happy to see never at a 21% because I think there is also a balance that we need to draw between focusing on a particular material and just looking at the broad spectrum, right? Understanding materials is important, but getting constrained is the other end of the spectrum, right? So I think it also is probably what the question is about, whether if you start with a material, is it going to constrain the value that you want to create out of it? So probably it fits in well for a designer because the designer is able to swing between these two extremes of just letting go of that knowledge and exploring, and at the same time coming back into knowing, okay, these are what they need to play with. So letting go of the current knowledge and exploring actually is an important part of this, right? Where you know you have certain solutions or certain materials to play with, but just exploring something beyond that is just as important as going deep into understanding what these materials that you have in front of you are also.
You know, for me, what's also interesting is that both of you have worked across cultures and geographies in terms of exploring materials. What have you discovered? I mean, yes, constraints and limitations of resource, material, price point. But what have you discovered on how people approach materials in different cultures, different settings, different geographies? Blessen, would you like to start first, and then we'll come to Zuzana?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can look at one of the examples that I heard from a design leader in an automotive company, where when we were presenting our materials, he said that, see, this is not going to work for India. And you need to really understand what our situation is, what our ecosystem is, what the usage patterns are, and the kind of requirements around the use and abuse of these materials. So something that works in Europe or Japan need not work or translate easily into our geography because of the way we work with our materials or the products. So that's been a good learning for us to really focus on something that's geographic and cultural, and to use that learning to create variations of our material or suggest the right ones. So it basically goes back to that end user needs. And it does have cultural context too. If you look at our cars are not the ones that are being sold in Japan or Europe. Right. So are many other products too. Some products are more successful in our context, some are not. So materials play an important role that way too.
Zuzana, you've obviously traversed the globe, as we could see in your first slide. How have you come across people's relationship to materials across cultures and geographies, of course?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put all the people in one bag. Obviously, it's very individualistic. But I mean, one thing, as you mentioned, is the cultural relevance and cultural aspect. You know, there are certain aspirations coming from the culture, from the kind of a background that people have, that attracts people to certain materials, certain surfaces, certain mechanical properties, even of the material. And another thing that I think many times we don't even think about is a climate, you know, that comes along with the geographies. For example, for me, it's been very interesting to learn that I've never, you know, before I came to India, I never lived in tropical country. Like the problems I sort out here with my material, I would never have to think about them back in Europe, simply because the climate is so different, you know, especially when you work with natural materials that you know, change with the climate a lot.
That's fantastic. I think, I mean, working with organic materials, especially, I think that's one of the things that is constrained by the environment in which it is. With 3M Blessen, I think one of the questions that I had for you personally was that when clients come to you, or when designers come to you to work with a specific material, do they come and you develop material for them as an organization? How does it really work? Do they come to you with a brief, or is it always an iterative exploratory process? What does it look like inside the design room?
It works both ways, actually. But we are really excited when customers and designers come to us with their challenges and their stories. So that gives a lot more space for us to explore and make those connections across the globe, across different functions. And we get excited when there is a problem to be solved. But if it's about, okay, can we supply a certain material that's already working, more of it, the scale of it, yeah, a designer might not be that interested. So that context of what the customer is trying to solve for really excites us, because there is a lot of learning in that, because then we are able to connect that to other areas. And that, I think, is something that inspires us also.
Is there an example that you can share with us that helps students understand what exactly when you means bring their story?
Yeah, one of the examples that I shared was about how we work with automotive companies. So there was a time when we used to get spec sheets for materials. Now these spec sheets go out to every competition, right? So we know exactly what needs to be supplied. But when we started looking at design engagement, we started connecting directly with designers, and we started getting to know what their future aspirations are, what kind of products they want to create, what are the aspirations of their end users, right? And then based on that, we could then take a step back and start exploring some of basically a broader exploration of materials, and to show them that, okay, can we consider some of these other areas that we have found which might be interesting for you in your products or in a range of products. So those conversations are much more richer and it helps get to a story that tells a bigger impact on what we can do for our customers and create more context for the solutions that we give. We could also guide them on the sustainability aspects, right? But if they've decided on a certain material, then there is very little to explore in that. So discussions on problems really give rise to a lot of solutions.
I think that's what you mentioned about impact is very, very interesting. And I think with 3M, of course, the scale of production and application is very, very large. And I think that makes an interesting question for Zuzana. And it's also something that has come up from the audience. And I'm going to combine the two perhaps to save time. So you've been working with sustainable materials, of course. So I think it's a two-part question for you, Zuzana. One is that what are the limitations of Malai leather and challenges of application to products? That's one. And the second, how do you scale up something which is, from the process at least feels very bespoke? So how do you, so two parts. One, what are the challenges that you face with this material? And second, of course, how do you then scale up?
Right. So the challenges that we face with the material mostly come into kind of sectors. A lot of people or people who approach us expect this material to be identical with leather, for example, which is of course not the case. This is material of completely different structure which can be used in similar or same applications, but leather is leather. So many people come with the assumption that this should be somehow an imitation, but there are other things that you have to consider when thinking about leather. It comes with a particular background, particular processes that doesn't make it so sustainable. So that's one thing. Another part of the question was regarding scalability. Yeah, the process of our manufacturing might look bespoke. That's because we are at a quite a beginning stage where we work in small scale. That doesn't mean that it's not scalable, and that doesn't mean that we are not actively investigating how to scale it up. Of course, we are, and it is scalable. The question that we have to answer very well is to which scale it is sustainable, because that is also a very important part, when you are thinking within the realm of sustainable manufacturing. Something that you manufacture in small scale might be sustainable because it's a small scale, but it doesn't necessarily have to stay sustainable if you produce en masse. So what we are trying to kind of define are these boundaries, so that we perhaps don't have to build a large factories in order to produce our material, but we are thinking more about the horizontal way of manufacture, where we would have small scale kind of container units, placed where the availability of raw material is. And I think that's also why we try to keep our processes kind of as simple as possible, because the more complex they become, the more difficult it would be to run them in kind of a more remote, perhaps, area.
I think, well, we maybe have time for maybe a last question. And I think that this one is for you, Philip. In a post-COVID scenario, a post-COVID scenario might not look like we will interact with materials in the same manner. What comments do you have on the changing scenario of sensory engagement with materials?
I agree. As we are learning more about how we interact with our environment, right? The way we interact with the materials and what we choose to interact with is going to change considerably. So I think that what's important is what we choose to engage with and interact with. So making our surroundings safe from that perspective, on choosing the right materials so that we're comfortable with it. For example, the surfaces that we interact with more cleanable, right? Does it harbor more microbes in them? Can it be regenerative, or can it be Can it have antimicrobial properties? So I think there'll be a shift towards a choice of materials that we interact with, and we personally are going to make those choices also. We'll go towards products and brands that provide us with a safer environment, safer products to use. So my comment is that change is happening, and I think it's to stay. So we are also working on creating more solutions in that space.
I think the question of the future is very, very tenuous in 2020 for everybody, as Zuzana mentioned at the beginning. But I think if we have the last poll question, and perhaps that will be the last bit we do before we close our session. Prerika, we have an interesting question on the future. Can we please have that on the poll? And we're going to close with this poll just to see what the future of materials seems like for the audiences here. If you had $1 million to invest, guys, okay, and only a startup or an initiative, what would it be? Would you develop materials to sustain humans on Mars? Would you develop materials for tactile experiences in virtual reality? Develop sustainable materials to reduce environmental impact? Develop materials to enable self-sufficiency on local community levels? Or none of the above, you want to do something else? Let's see what you guys think. And in the meantime, we'll keep the poll on. I want to ask both of you guys, what for either of you is the future of materials? I'm saying beyond 2020, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line. What do you see? Zuzana, maybe start with you first.
So the future of materials, I think that branches in many different ways, but I think they're kind of illustrated in the poll question as well. As Blessen mentioned before, I think the connection to the digital is going to be so much more important after this whole crisis, because we found out how essential it actually is for our existence here. So how are you going to bring that material aspect to something virtual, to something digital? How does it blend together even? Another branch which I see very important, that's already important now, is materials that are circular, materials that are green, because this whole COVID crisis has also brought us right back to the stage where we are filled with single-use masks, single-use gloves, and all that stuff. So how do we approach crises that might emerge, such as COVID? How are we prepared for that, also with materials that don't clog our environment? Yeah, and I think there also might be much more to come in materials that are somehow more intelligent, that do some of the thinking and some of the performance themselves.
Oh, fabulous. Blessen, your take, very quickly. Future of materials from your...
I'd also agree. The whole digital space is going to see a huge transformation in terms of the materials that we're going to interact with. More smart materials and intelligent materials. I think it's going to be a bit far. But I think a bigger impact is going to be through how we're going to control the impact on the environment. And this is real. Right? And we are seeing the impact of that. So as more regulations come in, I think material choices are going to be different. Just take, for example, if you're not allowed to throw anything out of your home, wouldn't your choice of what you bring into your home completely change? Right? Today, we have the freedom to throw things out the way we please and are not held accountable. So as those regulations change, as we become probably more responsible, and probably COVID is also teaching us on the amount of stuff that we have that we probably don't really need. I think our material choices are going to change with the environment. So yeah, I think that's my thought.
I think those both thoughts, I think, very, very similar. And I think our effort with this session was really to bring two perspectives on material. And they seem to have converged here in terms of how the future looks like for designers and especially young students. And I think that's really what we wanted to kind of do with the session, and allow people to think both in terms of industrial applications of material, and also look at bespoke, very culturally, environmentally relevant applications of material. And I think both you speakers have done exactly that for us today. I think with that, we are very, very happy to wrap up the session. We have come to the end, but Blessen, I know we have your video to play. So may I request if Prerika, you could play that video for our audiences, because I kind of feel you got cheated because of that. Prerika, do we have the video? Oh, super. So this is the 3M video that we were trying to unsuccessfully show. So maybe we leave everybody with that. But thank you, both of you, for your time and energy today. It was a great session.
And the idea that it could be something so much more. Well, if that was true, what if everything could be made better, smarter, cleaner, safer? So that's what we did. And before you knew it, those ideas were everywhere, saving lives, building neighborhoods, even exploring the stars. Millions of moments every day for over 100 years, in ways so great and small they often aren't even noticed. Oh, but they're felt. They're there when families reunite, lessons are learned, and great ideas are first born. And still we ask, what if we could be more as well? Make smarter use of our resources, build a company as strong as some of our products, and help make other companies even more successful. How do we give our people the power and opportunity to find the next future and cultivate curiosity for generations to come? So the next mind that sees a rock can become something so much more.
Thank you, both of you. I think I forgot completely about the poll answer actually. Prerika, could we please see the answer to the poll? All right.
Yay!
Develop sustainable materials to reduce environmental impact. And the second is develop materials that enable self-sufficiency on local community level. That's what you were looking for, Zuzana. You kind of...
yes, guys, I'm so proud of you.
Really so happy to see that. It's amazing. Yeah.
That's overwhelming. That's about 56%. I think that we have hope for this planet yet.
Yeah, there's hope.
So I think post 2020, I hope to see that from our audiences, both faculty and students. Hope we see many more exciting material ideas coming in place. And we've seen both types of processes here today. I think take your pick. But play with materials and make them sustainable, make it circular. And of course, try and make some money out of it too. Scale it up, get the funding, pitch it to 3M, maybe they buy it off you.
Or we could work together.
Or you could work together, exactly, to develop it. That's an excellent thought. Collaboration and sustainability sounds like a good thought to end the session with. Both of you, thank you very, very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. And for the audience, I hope there was a lot for you to chew on. Pardon the technological glitches, but I think we managed in the end because of the speakers. Thank you all. And we'll see you next time in episode 9. We'll tell you more about it very, very soon. All right, take care.